Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us across the fence. I'm Fran Stoddard. For this month's Birds Notes program, we're going to continue to explore some of the new technologies that are being used to learn more about the many facets of birds' lives. Joining us from the Audubon Center in Huntington is bird expert and conservation biologist Mark Labar. Thanks for being with us, Mark.
Always great to be here.
So, Mark, last month we talked about some new tools that researchers are using to better understand birds. Why don't you
There's a lot. Go ahead. There's a lot of new technologies. Last month we did talk about some of the work we've done with geolocators, and now the new nanotag technology and the Modus Tower network. And this work continues. And I was fortunate to be able to work with a bunch of folks from the University of Maine who are doing research on American woodcock and their migratory and wintering patterns. So we use some satellite transmitters that we attach to the birds in order to track their movements.
So how do you put these transmitters on?
Yeah, so that's the first step, is getting the woodcock. And here's a woodcock here. It's also known here in Vermont as a timber doodle. It's the bird that makes that twittering sound in the big aerial flights in the springtime in March. They are, a bird that likes young forest, early successional habitat. You asked earlier, they are a sandpiper.
Yeah, they look like a shorebird with that long bill.
Yeah, so they use that long bill to probe muddy areas for worms and other invertebrates. And they're, pretty much a regular here in Vermont. Most of the work that we did, we had to do at night. And of course, during time of COVID, we had to be very aware of that. So there were COVID protocols that were put in place. You can see face masks. We started and we caught the birds by setting up a bunch of mist nets to try to catch the birds as they moved right at dusk. And then after that, we would actually use a technique called spotlighting, where we used a big spotlight and we would search the ground for the birds, and then a second person would have a net and we would capture them on the ground.
Wow, and you would do this at dusk, which is not easy, but that's when you can catch them.
Yeah, and it was funny because I was the net guy. I actually was pretty good. I was 9 out of 11 when we were trying to catch them, so that was
impressive.
Good. And it was amazing. The folks from UMaine really knew where those woodcock were sitting in the open fields. Wow. And once we got them in the spotlight, we could capture them like that.
So what happens when you catch the birds?
So once we catch them, as you can see, they're about the size of a hand, and we bring them and get them out of the net. We try to figure out their age and their sex. Some of that can be done with woodcock by looking at their wings. The size of the wing and the size of the bill all gives us ideas as to whether it's a male and a female. And here you can see this bird right here is a male primarily by these 3 outer primary feathers. So those skinny feathers are actually the feathers that make the twittering sound when the woodcocks descend out of the sky during their aerial flight.
Right, they do these dives, right?
Yeah, so they sit there and go peent, 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 and then they'll lift off, circle the air, and come twittering down out of the sky. And it's those feathers, the air running over those outer feathers on the males, which give them their distinctive aerial sound.
Is that attracting females?
Yes. Yeah. So they're using, they use open fields for their displays. They nest in young forests and they feed in wet habitats, oftentimes in alder thickets, things like that, where they can get at their food below ground.
So you're measuring these different things to figure out age, and what other measurements might you be taking?
So one of the things that we do is, or I should say the folks from UMaine did, we do measure things like their legs. We put bands on them. You can see here the band, and we're measuring the tarsus or the foot of the bird. We also take measurements on their bills. That helps us sex them as well because the females
Hmm.
are much larger. And then, of course, all of that information is recorded on data sheets that the researchers use in order to follow these birds as they begin their migration south.
Great. So the male and female look a lot alike, except for those feathers. So it's
Yeah,
these measurements that help you.
yeah, the females are bigger.
Uh-huh.
They look almost exactly the same, but when we caught a couple of females, the bill size on the female is large enough that you can much tell the difference just by looking at the bird, but we take measurements just in case.
Great. And so how is that transmitter attached?
So the transmitter, it's a temporary transmitter that's put on the back of the bird. It is a harness method, so you can see the transmitter there, and you can see the antenna sticking out the back. And this transmitter, it's kind of a harness that's put around their legs that holds the transmitter in place until the material, the harness material, disintegrates, and then that transmitter falls off after a time. Here's me after successfully catching a woodcock, and as you can see, we're all bundled up as much for the mosquitoes as for the COVID pieces. But we were the folks from UMaine, and we were really aware about that work and doing that in close quarters.
Right. And these transmitters, they don't injure the bird in any way. You guys are really careful about all of that, of course.
Yeah, so there's with the harnesses, there's special plastic things so the harnesses don't rub. There's been numerous transmitters put on, so these folks have honed their skills. And again, it's a temporary thing, so that transmitter will fall off when it's done.
So what does the data show? What are you learning?
It shows spaghetti. I'm joking here, but this next picture is from last fall. And you can see this project has been done in New England and down in the southeast. And all of these lines represent individual birds and their migratory path as they move from down in Georgia, South Carolina, all the way up north. Vermont is a little bit late on the game. We are just putting transmitters on now. And you can see here, we put the transmitters on down in West Haven at the TNC Nature Conservancy Buckner Preserve and up at Missisquoi National Wildlife Refuge as well. And then transmitters also went on over at Conte Reserve. This is an example of a bird that up at Missisquoi that has stayed pretty local. So you can see.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Those blue lines are his travel patterns?
Right. So this bird is, the transmitter is sending up a signal up to a satellite, and these are the movements this bird has made over the course of a couple of weeks. And these birds are not quite ready to migrate yet. They're getting there, but we got the transmitters on before they started heading south.
Fantastic.
The folks at UMaine will really use this information to get a better understanding of these birds. That last slide there, the first slide showed this bird staying close. We did have a couple of woodcock that after we put the transmitters on, really went a great distance. Here you can see this transmitted bird was, banded and put the transmitter on down in West Haven, and it moved, way up in the Champlain Valley. We had a bird from Missisquoi even fly north up into Canada.
So what's that about? Why are they going north?
So it's, pre-migratory movements is what we call it. They're moving around to different areas. They're feeding so that they can build up the reserves to head south. And some of them stay close. Some of them meander a little bit further. But in the coming weeks, we should see that big push of birds as they head towards their wintering grounds.
Right. Would that be the same kind of movement you'd find during the summer, that they move in this fairly large area looking for food and other things? Are you learning about that?
That's one of the things that they're looking at, is how they're using their wintering grounds, what habitats they're using. Since we can pinpoint these birds with these transmitters, we can know exactly where they are, or I should, the folks from UMaine. and they can understand whether birds are sticking close to in their wintering areas or whether they move about a bit. So that's a lot of the questions that they're asking and trying to answer.
Awesome. So this is really exciting stuff, and we'll come back to one last question or two, but I just want to make sure that everybody knows how to get in touch with you with their questions. So if you have bird-related questions, you can pass it along to Mark at the address on your screen, or you can drop Mark an email. His address is mlabar@audubon.org. You can send Mark your questions and pictures, and he'll try to find the answers for you on an upcoming edition of Bird Notes. So we have maybe a minute left, Mark. It's wonderful to hear about woodcocks. Is there something else going on at Audubon that is very exciting for you besides this partnership with Maine?
You know, it's great here at the center to hear kids running around again. You know, because of COVID, things have gotten a little bit quiet, but some of our educational programs, you know, again, with all safety protocols being adhered to, are beginning to happen. So I can step out my back door here at the center and I can hear kids running around. And as much as birds are exciting and things are happening, seeing the Audubon Center kind of come back to life in these times, and you know, getting kids outside, it's been a really a bonus for me here at the center.
Right, I imagine, and it's a wonderful time of year to watch all the migration that's going on, and the Canada geese, and these amazing things that are going on outdoors. It's a great time to still be outdoors.
That's true, and you know, birds are moving out and some are moving in, so we'll keep everyone updated on where the woodcock go and what's showing up.
Okay, Mark Labar from Audubon, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you again next month.
All right, take care.
Thanks. And thank you for joining us across the fence. I'm Fran Stoddard. Stay well.